of not having comparable graduation rates to their white peers. So we intentionally center those two student groups unapologetically. The review, however, in addition, talked about the particular systemic discriminations that impact other equity seeking groups. And so we keep our eye on what we might be doing in the process to service those communities in the process of disrupting and dismantling racisms and oppressions of all kinds. But steering this conversation back to our Black, African, and African Caribbean students, I just want to start with some affirmations. Black students are intelligent, capable, gifted, strong, family oriented, culturally connected, beautiful, etc., etc., etc. Right? So we know this already, and we also know that Black students are aware when systems don't meet their needs. They know already. They know the teachers that support them, the ones that don't. They know the principals that understand what's going on in their buildings with respect to the experiences of Black students and the ones that don't. And that was, I think, clear in the testimonies that were outlined in the ministry review, which means as educators, and part of my work in supporting schools and educators in those schools is attending to some particular areas, again, that are addressed in the directives. The nature of the curriculum, where is the Black history in the curriculum, which is Canadian history? Where is the relevant instruction that keeps our Black students engaged with the content? Where is the content that speaks to the histories of Black, African, and African Caribbean students, the contributions of the Black community, visual images, representations, narratives of ancestral ways of being a knowing, apart from, might I say, popular music and athletics, right? I think we do much more than that and contribute in diverse ways. And I would say Black students are asking, where is the just treatment when I am viewed as a criminal or as an adult and not the child that I am or the pre-adolescent that I am or the young adult that I am? So I've talked about a couple directives, really without naming them. Our guidance system review, which is Directive 17, the issue of the overrepresentation of our students, Black students in suspensions and expulsions, which is Directive 21. Understanding the relevance of the curriculum, which is through the equity audit, which is Directive 18, and I believe Directive 20 is the ways in which we communicate to our Black families the educational information that they need to know so that they are the ones with their young people, with their children, making educational decisions, in the best interest of their children with schools, not the schools making the decisions for the families. So that for me is the context that I have been, I think, operating in Peel, and I kind of have a bit of a laundry list on, what do we do about all of these pieces. So please, cue me, wave at me if I've exceeded my 3 to 5 minutes. But one thing I will say is specific to the equity department. Is how we work as a central office to bring supports, to bring strategies, to bring human resources, to bring opportunities to schools in collaboration with the other departments, such as special education, such as curriculum and instruction, such as our Caring and Safe School department, newly formed, to ensure that much of what I have identified as those key directives, and those key directives point to the issues, the examples, and the examples where systemic discrimination that disproportionately target Black students and Indigenous students might be addressed and undone. Now, I didn't get away from anybody. So do I carry on or hang on?
Hang on for now, Donna. You've got a lot of good stuff in there, and we're going to come back to you.
You
I'm
bet.
excited for the question I have for you, just based on what you said already.
Okay.
I appreciate that affirmation you gave to our Black students too. I'm going to pass it on to Peter, and you can go ahead.
Yes, good evening. Thanks to the CACD, fellow panelists, the attendees, for an opportunity to engage in such an important dialogue. These open, honest conversations need to take place in order for growth to occur and for healing to occur as well. And yeah, I'm proud to be a part of it. You know, we look back at the unfortunate and frequent instances, such as the murder of George Floyd and the social justice that stemmed from it. It really ignited self-reflection, not just for us as individuals, but the larger institutions that have played a significant role in shaping society for us. Dissension is vital and a necessary component to spark change. So with that, it's an important time for evolution, reimagination, growth, based on consultation and being willing to learn from the community, taking into account all voices, all social locations. You know, we are committed to adapting to better serve the community for the needs of today. Systemic racism, anti-Black racism exists throughout all of society, and policing is certainly not immune to that. Our chief has acknowledged this, and he's taken historic steps in looking to change the embedded systems within an institution that failed to adapt at the rate the community evolved. I find that, you know, policing has been stuck in some antiquated ways of doing business and isn't necessarily reflecting what the community needs. So we have a lot of catching up to do. This particular project is called the Human Rights Project, and that involves Peel Police and the Ontario Human Rights Commission working together to identify areas of change both internally and externally within Peel Regional Police. And they're going to establish legally binding criteria and legislation for Peel Police to adhere to. So this opening of the doors, creating so much more transparency and really giving a outside in look as well in terms of how we're doing things and really rejigging everything. In terms of anti-oppressive practices, you know, Peel has now a non-enforcement unit, which sounds contradictory to, you know, the term policing in itself. But really the goal here is to collaborate with the community to ensure they have access to the right human service agencies. And we're, you know, we can identify those that have a greater risk of harm or victimization. We need to intervene at an earlier stage. And, you know, again, with it not being a police matter, getting the services there that can help appropriately. And also one of the key additions to our service has been collaborating with the Canadian Mental Health Association to have a crisis worker with an officer responding to mental health crisis calls in the community. So again, services, the right services are getting to the right people at the right time. And that's really what's an important link here. Often policing has been the band-aid to a myriad of social issues that weren't all criminal, and it criminalized issues that were not criminal at all. So now we're getting the right services there and starting to move the needle in the right direction. So during this transformational time, it's vital to keep our youth engaged, aware, and empowered throughout, because our actions today are shaping their visions for tomorrow. So, you know, we want to get our future leaders involved in having a voice and making a change with us and helping steer the ship in the right direction. So thank you.
Thank you, Peter. I'm going to pass it on to Tress.
Hi, everyone. CACD, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm a little different because I'm a program coordinator for a nonprofit organization. So I'm probably viewing this, everybody's doing it a little differently because of my particular program. So I'm a program coordinator for 3 programs. The first program is called Empower Her. And Empower Her is a program specifically developed for young women between the ages of 16 to 29. The entire concept of the program is to teach civic action and community engagement So the girls go through different pillars of training. With the pandemic, community engagement really changed a lot. We had realized that for our youth to stay engaged, they needed actual skills to be able to do that. So we added digital skills training for our youth so that they can be engaged in the community. And their whole thing is, for us, engagement isn't just um, something that you do because it makes you feel good, but it's something that you do so that you learn and that you're actually impacting the community in a positive way and understanding how that impact works. So that is Empower Her. And for people who would like to join Empower Her, they have to be between the ages of 18 to 29, and they have to be a resident of Peel, so Caledon, Mississauga, Brampton. We have fluid, basically our recruitment or our registration is fluid because our training is also fluid. So like people can come in, come out, come in, come out. But basically at the end of it, most of our participants in Empower Her will probably do about 500 hours by the end of the year in various community projects, which includes working with not-for-profits, small businesses, and people in need, right? We also have another project called LEAD, and that is for newcomer youth only, and that is for youth 15 to 24. That particular group, what they do is specifically, so I want to say it's newcomer youth. And so what they are supposed to do is really become involved with Canada and how to be a Canadian, how to be really involved. So there is, what they do is they create two large events for our community of things that they are personally interested in. And it is geared for all youth. That's really fun because they learn uh, event planning and they learn time management and they learn to be involved and not to feel like they're an outsider. Um, then we have another program called Elevate, and these ones are for women 18 to 40 years old, again, newcomer women. And with this particular group, these women are a little different because we're not looking at employment, we're looking at community engagement. So again, it's helping these women get experience in Canada, create network so that they can actually have great references. So all of our programs are really amazing for young people, not only because obviously like CACD, we have this great leadership training, but for us, it's a little bit more because we are actually gearing them towards career development and employability skills. So that's the big difference of how we do what we do. So outside of that, I am very lucky because I have a fantastic job. I work with a lot of young people. And, I get to wake up in the morning knowing that by the end of the day, I probably created like some great impact, whether it's, encouraging them to be better, encouraging them to learn how to, career develop or whatever. Yes, so I thank you very much for inviting me again. And I hope I'll be able to contribute something useful today. So that's it. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Tress. I'm going to pass it on to Rachel, who will pass on to our next panelist.
Thanks so much, Carissa. Amin, the floor is yours.
Thank you to the CACD for inviting me to speak on this panel today. My name is Amit Sahota. I am co-founder of the Canadian EdTech Startup of the Year, EI Amplified. We were recently named Top 21 of 2021 in learning technology. We're also part of a few accelerator groups out of the University of Toronto, including IQBUTM and Innoved. We're heavily engaged within the Brampton community at the Brampton Entrepreneurship Center, ACEDA, and the Brampton Innovation District. And my work really focuses on inspiring change through data. Most of my work has been focused on equity and inclusion at the moment with local schools within PDSP and Wire DSP. And I really look on and engaging all stakeholders within education in order to gather their perspective and gather their voice on equity and inclusion. I'm able to ask you questions such as how do you feel about equity, how do you feel about inclusion, and be able to drive the different emotions that different stakeholders and different ethnicity groups feel. From some of our work, we've seen that ESL students, newcomer students, Black students don't feel as if they're getting enough support. Same with the LGBTQ community. And we really use this data as a way to provide baseline measurements into how people are feeling, and also provide it as impact assessments to see how new initiatives and new plans have impacted people. We also have a workshop where we engage students in order to engage their parents on how they feel about equity and inclusion. Education is often a three-pronged approach, which requires parents, students, and teachers all to collaborate together. And I aim to build holistic schools through engaging everyone through data. Um, Also, I've had the pleasure of having like Trez mentor me as well. So she's a great person to help that's helped me expand. And really the focus of my work has been giving data at a local school level because it's often given from top down. I'm taking a bit of a bottom to up approach, engaging all community members and then trying to take it to the different school boards and see what we can do from there. Um, yeah, feel free to reach out to me anytime. I'll put my email in chat, and I look forward to today's discussion. Thank you.
Sounds fascinating. That's exciting. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over now to Nancy.
Hello, good evening. A quick shout out. I have a former student that messaged me in the chat. So it's so nice to be in a space with a former student. So as was mentioned in the bio, I'm Nancy Cargioli, and I work within Dufferin Peel Catholic District School Board as the acting coordinator for equitable and inclusive education. And so as an educator within Dufferin Peel District School Board, we work collectively to ensure that all students and staff are welcomed, included, and valued. Equity and inclusion are valuable contributors to overall student success. And as a faith-filled community, we are committed to ensuring that all students are engaged, that they feel welcomed and included in every aspect of school life. Systemic racism, in particular anti-Black racism, exists within educational spaces, and within the scope of educational structures, we have identified some of the following areas where barriers to learning exist. There's an adequate representation of racialized educators with a particular focus on Black and Indigenous educators. The availability of culturally responsive resources that affirm Black student identities, and the disproportionalities in treatment and outcomes for racialized students, in particular Black and Indigenous students. And so to begin, I just wanted to highlight that this work in combating systemic racism, anti-Black racism and discrimination, it's rooted in working in solidarity and honoring the dignity of the human person. It's rooted in seeking community engagement, and it's rooted in centering Black student voice. And so how is Dufferin Peel Catholic District School Board addressing discrimination and anti-Black racism? Although the list isn't exhaustive, just to touch on a few things that our department works on in equity is looking at making changes to policy. And so our board has, as many boards have, a multi-year strategic plan, looking within that plan to make changes to wording that address the forms of disproportionalities and a systemic racism that exist. Removing the impact of wording that talks about removing the impacts of colonialism and white supremacy. Looking at the creation of a strategic plan to dismantle anti-Black racism. Most recently, we have developed a Black Community Advisory Council that we've had run up and running and working towards moving towards these goals. And the Black Community Advisory Council was instrumental in putting together the strategic plan to dismantle anti-Black racism. Supporting educators with curriculum, in particular providing professional development that encourages a pedagogical shift to work through an anti-oppressive and create a framework and create inclusive environments. We've had Black student writing teams and teacher writing teams that focus on uplifting resources that celebrate Black joy, achievements, and contributions, and history. And so at the forefront of this work, it's to put students first and to call all individuals to contribute to an environment that supports a responsive, equitable, inclusive, and caring culture of learning. And so with that, I'll leave it to the next panelist.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Nancy. I can't tell you how encouraging it is to see the changes that are being made in many boards in terms of dismantling anti-Black racism, anti-Indigenous, and many other, dismantling racism in general and oppression in general. It's very encouraging. Thank you. And we'll have some more questions for you soon. Kyle, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Welcome. Do you want to introduce yourself to us?
Sure. I'm
Awesome.
Kyle. I'm a student at Erindale Secondary School. I'm in grade 12. And I'm the current leader of my own school's Black Student Alliance, as well as having a little bit of activity within the BSAAC as well, thanks to Ms. Luke and some other recommendations from other teachers. I'm glad to be here.
Thanks, Kyle. We're glad you're here. Thanks so much. Looking forward to hearing from you again shortly. And Marika, are you there?
Yes, hi, good evening.
Go ahead and introduce yourself to us.
Yes, of course. So hi, everyone. My name is Marika. I'm in grade 11, and I, too, am also the president of my BSA. We call it BEC, like Black Excellence Club, but same thing. And I am also a part of the BCSA, thanks to Miss Rachel Luke. Another thing about me outside of like my school community, I also have been a competitive dancer. I've been doing it for over 14 years. And I am also a gymnastics teacher and dance coach. So I love working within the community, and some of my aspirations, I hope to work in the medical field. And the topic of anti-Black racism and systemic racism, I feel is so important, which is, I love finding like the nexus of medicine and excuse me, the nexus of medicine and social justice, because there's so much in between it and there's so much to look into. So yeah, I'm just overall really excited to be here and listen to everyone. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Marika. So happy that you're here. Thank you. Carissa, I'm going to turn it back over to you for the specific questions.
Yes. Awesome. Thanks again to the panelists. And now the audience kind of know who's in this space and what's being brought to the table, the expertise that's being brought. And of course, we always appreciate having youth voices, because we can't have this conversation without youth. And so it's so important for you guys to be present. So Renee, back to the top of the list, I have a specific question for you. How do we break down the stigma around mental health and mental illness in the Black community and in the BIPOC community?
Well, I'm glad you asked because I banked all of what I'm going to say, and I'd go as quickly as I can on a lot of research. Yes, indeed, there is a lot of stigma in the Black community. And I broke it down for the fact that at the top of the list, it says, much of the research found that the Black community has a high degree of stigma associated with mental illness. A public opinion poll showed that 65% of African Americans believe depression was a personal weakness. And of course, some believe that since we survived as a people for so long with so much adversity, we should be strong. And if we showed otherwise, it's a sense of weakness. So going down to the next one, it says the women even look at it more as weakness or issues connected to self-love. But if you're not African American and you say you're Caribbean, wait a minute. It says the Caribbean region has demonstrated the same type of belief system, where even in some parts of the Caribbean, suicide is up to 70% in some parts of the Caribbean, like in particular Guyana. Now, going down to the bottom, as we see that it's very high in places like Trinidad and Guyana, we ask the question, of course, of what's really, really going on. So my regulatory body, which is the College of Registered Psychotherapy, actually did a survey, and 38% of the survey respondents who are Black reported poor or fair mental health, and stated that they had used mental health services. So the numbers are very low. 60% said they'd be more willing to use mental health services if the mental health professional were Black. So therein lies the answer to the big work, to me, more than ever, as it is to do with us, as what needs to be done. What really is required is that we got to get our people out there to offer mental health. And I'm glad I rose to the occasion when I left teaching and went to become a psychotherapist, because everybody needs me and others like me. And so, yeah, that's the most important point to be made, is that there is a dire need for people in our community, even if it's only 35.4%, because this is the CRPO gathering the stats and was posted during Black History Month, urging therapists, to do the best they can in going out there and doing their job. The one thing that stands between us as a Black community getting the support for mental health that we need, though, is money. Because First Nations people, who I see a lot of, have the service through what's called the NIHB, which is a special program. And so grassroots to this is that we need to advocate the government to have some kind of program or funding through the Black organizations that we have, where more support can be given, where all the person needs to do is to log in and register their need for mental health, just like OHIP and other things, and they'll get it. I'm not sure exactly how it will work, but it's funding that is the biggest, what's the word?
Barrier.
Hindrance, yes.
Yeah, I'm really hearing representation and funding are the two big things that are
Yes.
impacting stigma in the BIPOC community.
And our
appreciate
people
that.
need us. They would come
Mhm.
for mental health, but they're not going to they're not going outside their own community or race. Let's be specific here, because I think there's a feeling of trust, of divulging, like I said at the top. And so those who can match will be able to be effective. And I already see this in my work. I see it every day, even with the First Nations people. It's a different trust system between myself and them that just keeps going. It does work.
Thank you, Renee.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I so appreciate that insight. And I think it is so true. And I'm going to transition to Donna. I have a specific
Can
question
I
for you as
interrupt
well.
though? Can I
Yeah,
interrupt?
yeah.
Someone just posted something. I really need to address it. Someone says there's a lot of funding provided to Bell Let's Talk. How are you partnering with this? Bell Let's Talk would have to hire me for me to offer them the quality of work that I do. I don't know anything about Bell Let's Talk in the sense that I guess it would be to Bell Let's Talk to psychotherapy and counseling would probably be like tutoring to teaching. It's two different things. So I just wanted everyone to know, because therapy takes time and therapy takes work, and all the different therapeutic modes that can help as a people. Intergenerational trauma is not from Bell Let's Talk. That's why, for example, Canada's First Nations people are getting those help because of the funding that's given to them. Is that fair? So that's my response.
I appreciate
Thank
you pointing out the difference between the two.
Yeah.
Thanks, Renee.
Welcome.
And going on to Donna, and so a panelist will have about 3 minutes to answer your question. What are the gaps or changes that need to take place in the PDSB for BIPOC youth to sustain success?
Gosh, thanks for that question. I would say holistically, virtually every structural change that has been outlined in the ministry directives is the change that needs to happen. The change is not on is not about the students, which is why I intentionally started off with the affirmation. There's nothing wrong with the Black African Caribbean students that attend PDSB schools. It's the system, right? So it's taking approach from, all sides in, all angles in, top down, bottom up, and sparing no gap. Um, and I think part of the challenge too, Carissa, is that with 2 years since the release of the directives, I know that Black families are wondering, so what has changed, right? So, that's the other part of it. And I would say, as someone who's come in new to the district, the extent of the dismantling was much more than I even imagined, much more than I even imagined. So, I'm going to talk about where I've been working, which is in the equity department. And some of the pieces that we've been putting together on the ground is beginning to build out the team so that we have human resources to support schools. So that we can be reaching forward to students, Black students specifically, so that they know that they're seen and heard, and know that there's an intention through the equity department, allies and advocates, to ensure that students, particularly our secondary students, know what their education, human rights are, what they can ask for, what they deserve. And so I'm so excited when I hear about the student associations and the student leaders who are here on the call, because they are, quite frankly, our point people for their peers to begin those dialogues of how about, forming these collectives so that they are asking for what they deserve. And those teacher advocates are ensuring that they're reaching forward to their principals to get the funding, the resources to grow those opportunities. One of the ways we look to support that through the offices with our Black student graduation coaches. When that program was launched, it was a ministry pilot. It's no longer a pilot. We've assumed funding as a district to ensure that the coaches the 4 that we have are situated in secondary schools, reaching out to Black students and families to do some plotting towards graduation for all of our Black students that access that resource. And we're clear that 4 is not enough for 259 schools, I think 33 of which are secondary schools. So we're looking to bring on more. We're working with our Black community who have, been, I think, models in terms of what advocacy looks like, and how within the diversity within the Black community, that advocacy looks different, depending on your entry point. And they formed an alliance and are working with PDSB staff through the equity office to build out a Black student strategy. So that Black student strategy talks about some of the pieces that I had addressed earlier on in my pitch around curriculum, around student voice and engagement, around community and family engagement. It even speaks to our hiring practices, to which we've been held to account as well. And I think one sort of directive entry point is the Directive 17, which is the guidance system review that we want. Black males, Black educators in guidance roles who understand, Black African and African Caribbean family systems, listening to the kids, students, there for the students, and are going to be telling them how to plot the pathway that they care to plot, to do what they need to do to contribute, in a satisfying ways in society. So those are some of the pieces that are taking place. And one other is we're wanting to bring some of the resources. So speaking to what Renee was talking about, Renee Wallace, around mental health and mental health resources that are specific to the needs of Black families, apart for something that's a little bit more generic, which is the Bell Let's Talk. So really appreciate your response, Renee. Making sure that we're taking advantage of the ministry program called the SFA program, the Student Family Associations, where we're having these collectives that are run and organized by individuals that are, have lived experience in the Black community, mental health and community expertise that want to connect directly with schools, be in schools, and to create hubs so that students are accessing these resources, because I'm telling you, Black students know what they need. And if they don't know what they need, they know that there's something out there for them that speaks to them and their experiences. So that's just the tip of iceberg. We're so conscious that there's much more that we need to do. So there's tangibility in terms of the change. We understand the voraciousness that our Black community advocates bring, because they want change. And our Black students, our Black youth, our Black children deserve every bit of it.
Thank you, Donna. I'm hearing a trend also of representation of students having people who understand their background in their schools, and I appreciate that. Thank you. For Peter, I have your specific question, and I know you've touched a bit on collaboration with CMHA, but can you provide insight on what Peel Police are currently working on to create trust and build relationships within the community?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you look at even the term creating trust, it kind of, when you create something, it almost feels manufactured. So I think the real answer is really rooted in authenticity. The anti-oppressive lens needs to be embedded throughout the organization, throughout the fabric of how we do business and how we view policing. There had been, there's a saying that sometimes, there's almost more recognition, there's less recognition put towards de-escalating a situation, right? In terms of growth in the reward system within policing. And that's one of the things that the Human Rights Project is going to be addressing and looking at in terms of, what are officers valuing as, in terms of their career growth? How can I get from point A to point B? What's being rewarded, right? So we really have to look at those, grassroots things from the inside. But otherwise, I mean, again, it's embedding that preventative lens throughout the organization, whether it's in a homicide bureau, because there are many more victims than just the victim of a homicide, right? There's family, there's the accused, there's, spectators, people that were by. So we need to really start looking at providing support in those areas and making sure we're not losing sight of that. So yeah, the perspective change of front loading prevention as opposed to really stocking up on our incident response. We're also doing things in terms of youth engagement. We have a pro-action program that funds, programs for youth and police. So we do everything from like a basketball camp to horseback riding to a Lego program to a culinary program. Now, again, to humanize the experiences with police. We're called an incident response. It's someone's bad day. Something has to go wrong. So if we can humanize positive interactions and get to know each other for who we are, and that's going to go both ways. It's not just saying, hey, the community is going to learn the police aren't all bad, but I think there's room for police to learn that the community isn't all bad. So I think that's going to be a key thing to maintain. These open, honest dialogues that we're having here now, just the candid conversations that people can be real and not just accept feedback about what's happening and how people feel. There's often been a defense to, well, you weren't there and until you're in someone's shoes. But no, realistically, we can still care, and we need to start doing more of that authentically. So, and again, the visibility and accessibility piece that we talked about, we need to get into the areas that we're only going in an incident response. We need to go there before and socialize and humanize and learn about, really gain a true appreciation for the different. I'm big on social location and, intersectionalities. Really need to take that seriously and not just looking at it through the neoliberal, hey, there's, equality there, but then where's the equity? So yeah, to answer your question, it's going to be authentic investment in the community and our relationships. and how we do our job and how we reward, the proper actions in our job.
Yeah, thank you for critiquing the question, because I think you're right. It's not about creating. When we're trying to create them, we're taking that power position, but it's about authentic relationship and real relationship. Thanks, Peter. Tress, I'm gonna come on down to you. And you wear many hats, and and especially for our youth, there are a lot of youth that will recognize your face because of how you've supported CACD and talking about employability. And so I'm wondering if you can kind of elaborate for us, how has the labor market changed, and what should BIPOC youth be aware of when seeking employment?
I'm actually prepared for this question. But before I say that, I want to say, Peter, I really like your answer. I really believe that there should be a reward system for de-escalation rather than encouraging or not really encouraging de-escalation. And I still appreciate. I remember. I don't know if you remember that big problem in Toronto where that police officer was able to de-escalate a situation rather than using violence. And yeah, thanks for that. I'm glad to hear that this is something that you also believe in, because I really think that there should be a reward system for police officers to encourage the de-escalation, so there will be a lot more positive interaction between police officers and our community. So yeah, I wanted to just say that because it's a great answer. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
So with regards to me, the labor market has really been changing for years. So the disruption, which was what the 2 years is all about, just made everything happen all at one time. If you really think about it, many companies were able to do a pivot fairly quickly because telecommuting, which is remote work, has been happening in mostly upper management positions. There has been talk for years about making less carbon footprint, and so there's really been a big yet gradual change that was already happening. But what we noticed through the last 2 years and now, systems in place is far behind that change, right? So now they're trying, so basically we're trying to catch up. The problem is we're still looking at reacting to the issues that are happening rather than being proactive. With the wealth in Canada and the amount of youth here, it's strange that we are still having an employment shortage, and the shortage is being filled by new immigrants because our own youth are far, far, far behind the game. So like, for example, most young people are still being pushed towards going into, jobs like law or engineering, which is great. Like engineering is actually still is still pretty useful, but it kind of depends on what kind of engineering, and the guidance isn't there because maybe we just don't know, right? So I really feel that some of the most important thing, and this is for me, there are teachers here, so they could probably appreciate this. Giving them more funding for personal development, giving them time to go and meet, to go to, like I have opportunities that most teachers probably won't have, which is I go to conventions, right? I go to these things that cost like $500-600 to go in for 2 or 3 days. So I'm learning things that are, you know, that are far more now, right? Because of that's kind of my job. So for me, I think there should be more funding put towards helping teachers who want to maybe learn more or do more, and they should be supported in that because after all, they are the mind, they're the ones that create these great minds, right? So if we're not helping them develop, then we are in turn making our youth far behind. So I have to say that because my sister's so I have to say that. And that's one of the things we're always talking about is how I have so much more opportunity than she does when it comes to actually career development, right? But another example that I realized, so my son graduated last year from university. He took environmental studies. It was a course that most people don't even know about, although we're going through like kind of this whole environmental change. Like Canada right now is, saying that we want by 2030 we want less carbon footprint. Well, how is that going to happen by 2030, right? Unless we have the right people in the job. How are we going to have no carbon footprint by 2050 unless we have the right people in the job? How are we going to have those right people in the job if we're not educating our kids now towards getting that job? And I'm not talking about school so much as everything else, right? So I think it's very important that we, that we step out of this zone of what is regular, because what we're actually doing is we're not helping our children get to where they need to be. And that is not the fault. I don't like to blame one system for this because I feel like parents need to be involved in this. So it's not a school problem. This is a community problem. So yeah, so for me, it's like teaching our community to understand, because a teacher might say to our youth, you know what, there is more money in this field. I see that you're talented, you're good with your hands. So they say all this to this kid, and then this kid turns around and their parents are like, no, I want you to be a lawyer. So it doesn't make any sense, because there's no job in law anymore unless you have the right connections, right? There's no job in psychiatry anymore unless you want to be a PhD. So there is all these additional costs that is only impacting our youth today. So I really feel like in my end, from what I'm experiencing, we need to really look at the overall system and really learning. And like a big thing for me, like I said, is I feel like teachers and guidance counselors and all that should have definitely more access to funds so they can themselves be able to do some of these things. And not only funds, there are time involved in doing these kinds of things. And I think that if these are the people that are educating our children, they should also have the advantages necessary to be able to do that. So that's one. The other thing is this nowadays, if you look at all you kids better look at job calls right now, okay? Because if you look at every job call, it says 2 years experience, right? You come out of university, you're going to your first entry level job, and it says 2 years related experience, okay? So you go through school, you have all this fun thing, you go to high school, you go to college, university, then you graduate with no 2 years of experience. The worst thing that could have happened to kids this year was 2 years of losing their post-secondary education, because they lost 2 years of experience, right? But had they volunteered, had they put the hours into helping the community, had they developed the kind of relationships necessary to get that reference, they would have gained their 2 years of experience. So we need to really actually stop this 40 hours volunteer requirement for graduation. It's ridiculous, right? It's I'm sorry if I'm saying that, I offended somebody, but it's ridiculous. 40 hours is not going to give them the necessary skills to have that relevant experience. Like I was saying, my son went through environmental studies, graduated great. He lost 2 years of experience. He ended up going through a boot camp for 3 months in web development. My son's 22. His volunteer experience behind him, all of the graphic stuff he did for years for different people, different organizations, all that kind of stuff. I feel so bad, but he's literally making $3,000 less than I am. So, I mean, that is what we have to be looking at, is encouraging our kids to be part of the community. Because being part of the community, not only are they going to respect people like the police, they're going to respect the people like teachers, right? Respect us, but they're going to really appreciate the development that they're going through. So I have a little problem with the 40 hours, because I feel like they do 40 hours and then they're gone, and they're really missing out on all the important things that they need to actually get a good job, not that minimum wage job, but a good job after school. So that's my say. Sorry,
Thank you, Trez. And I'm definitely hearing, yeah, we do associate certain value to certain jobs, but maybe that's not the route that's best to go down. I appreciate you giving that advice. Rachel, I'll pass it to you.
Thanks so much, Carissa. So I am going to turn it over now to Aman. And if you could tell us, please, what effect does emotional intelligence, EI, have on youth development and success?
Yeah, that's a great question. And thank you for asking it. I think emotional intelligence is kind of the foundation that builds not even in youth success, but adult success. For example, if your teacher is not emotionally intelligent, they're not able to understand the emotions the student's feeling, how does that impact the student, right? Say if I can't see the student struggling because they're dealing with an issue at home, then the student won't be able to learn. If the student themselves doesn't understand that the emotions they feel are negative or they're in constant depression, how are they able to learn? How are they able to engage others in conversations? And as a parent, if we're not able to understand our children's emotions and we're not able to see what's going on in their life, what path does that lead them down to? And do they feel as if they don't have any support? So, in my opinion, emotional intelligence is one of the most important things that's not really discussed. We all experience emotions, and emotions drive a lot of the decisions we have. It drives a lot of the conversations we have. It drives a lot of the relationships we have. Humans are emotional beings. And in order to look at things like equity, inclusion, racism, we need to be together emotionally. We need to be tied together. And the one thing that makes us similar, we need to call upon those positive emotions and use them to drive forward. But we need to learn from those negative emotions and continue to grow. We need to ensure that people who feel as if their voice isn't being heard, their voice is being heard and being portrayed through their emotions. The most powerful things behind our words are the emotions that we share, right? Each word has an emotional impact. Each word has the ability to change someone's perspective. And it's only through understanding emotions, building empathy for each other, even though you may not understand what a person is going through, just them sharing their story is a huge factor, right? Being able to say, hey, you know what, I don't appreciate that comment you made because it reminded me of a bad situation I was when I was younger. There's power in that because then the other person gains perspective they have not always seen. So I believe that emotions are not only essential in solving issues like equity, inclusion, and racism, but it fosters personal self-development. We need to be self-aware of our emotions in order to know our purpose as well as youth. Being aware of what drives us forward, what pushes us back. Often we do things, for example, just for fun, right? But what if that was really our purpose? And what if we started chasing that purpose more? Trez kind of mentioned it that a lot of parents push their kids to be lawyers, but why don't we push our kids to be more self-aware? Why don't we push them to learn about themselves and see what they're really interested in, right? So I feel like emotional intelligence is a foundation in all aspects of not only youth success, but society success. And it's something that needs to be discussed more and be measured as a society. Thank you for that question.
That was beautifully stated. Thank you so much. I know for me as an educator that emotional intelligence is very, very important in having a very strong rapport with my students and making sure that they feel that they're in a safe space where their voices are heard and they're understood and their emotions are understood is very, very important in the classroom. So thank you very much for that. Nancy, I'm going to turn it over to you. In what ways is your school board working on implementing diversity, equity, and inclusion practices into school culture? And how has this had an impact? I think you addressed this a little bit in your opening statements, but if you could just expand a little, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to begin just because I want to touch on something that Donna had mentioned earlier at PDSB. And I just think it's such an important point, as I know we have some students on today's call, and just ensuring that we stress that when we look at the work that we come together tonight to talk about, that we stress that we address the systemic issues, right? And we don't look at students as because they come to us with so many gifts. And I thank Donna for starting her opening comment with the positive affirmations. Because that sat very, it sat very well with me. So in terms of Duff and Peel, I'll continue to sort of highlight this ongoing work that needs to be done. And so I start with the importance of making changes to policy, because I think policy is so highly connected to accountability. And so when we look at our multi-year strategic plan, I think what was so important within the updates that were made and the changes that were made to our multi-year strategic plan was naming, again, I'll go back to naming disproportionalities that exist, dismantling impacts of colonialism, addressing white supremacy and its pervasiveness within school systems, and frankly, within curriculum, and decentering whiteness and bringing back in other voices. The work that's being done to engage stakeholders in conversations and centering Black voice, and that comes through the work of our Black Community Advisory Council. It's still ongoing. There's so much more work to be done, and to work to implement and continue to sustain the strategic plan to dismantle anti-Black racism and specifically address every point that comes within that plan. Very important is supporting educators with curriculum. We do a lot of work when we offer professional development sessions. We do a lot of work in selecting texts and resources that operate through an anti-oppressive lens, and offering those professional development opportunities to educators to interrogate and disrupt their own practice and really look at what they have in their class and what they're doing, and really decenter whiteness and bring back in stories of Black contributions, Black achievements, Black history. Looking at supporting writing teams. We have a wonderful team at one of our schools in Mississauga that did some work surrounding the Black Voices Lab, or as many have talked about tonight, a BSA. And they have this wonderful program that's running so well within their school. And so to really center and honor their voice, we worked with them in the summer to write a guide, if you will, about how they did this work. And so they wrote this guide in the summer as a writing team for our board. And we now have this document on our SharePoint for educators to start a BSA in their school. On top of that, to support this work, we've offered funding to each school that has a BSA, but also in the inception and creation of a BSA to really push that work and ensure that this is happening system-wide. And I know Donna talked about it, but as well in our school, the graduation coaches for Black students. This program is, for the schools that we have three actually, and the work is to get more. But the work that is happening in the schools anecdotally is phenomenal. And so when we talk about impact, they run an Afro and paint night, and being in that space and seeing the affirmations, the spaces where students can celebrate who they are unapologetically, and creating those spaces where you are welcomed, you are valued, you are included. This program needs to be more widely spread throughout. And so I hope that touches on or expands on a bit of the work that our board is continuously trying to work on.
Fantastic. I was just thinking at Peel, we also had a writing team for BSA. So we also created a resource. And I'm wondering if there's a way that we can possibly collaborate.
Absolutely.
I think that'd be fantastic, because I feel so many boards are doing similar things, but we seem to be sort of reinventing the wheel. It'd be wonderful if boards could come together and say, well, this is what we've got and this is what we've got. So I'll be reaching out to you.
Please.
I think that'd be awesome.
And really for best practices, because there's so many things, but it needs to be consistent, and it needs to, we need to write and okay, so thank
That'd
you.
Be great. Yeah, for sure. I have one more quick question for you. You talked about the PD for teachers, and I was just wondering, are a lot of teachers on board when the PD happens? What do you find the response and the reaction is?
So yeah, so we have a program. So I'm new to the team, but we've had before me we had a wonderful coordinator, and she started our Catholic equity leads, and so I'm continuing to work on that. So we have 2 Catholic equity leads that are work in every school. So we have 157 or 55 schools within our board, and we have 2 Catholic equity leads per school. And so those teachers come to the PD, and the work within those teachers to disseminate the information widely within their schools. Could the uptake be more? Yes. And we work on continuing to offer this information, we have 2 social media accounts, continuing to spread this information widely, and continuing to, I guess, root it in our policy and our practices, and talk about this pedagogical shift that needs to happen.
Wonderful. Okay, thanks very much, Nancy. And as I said, I will be in touch.
I'll be looking forward to hearing from you.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Kyle, I'm going to turn it over to you. And my question for you is, what do you think BIPOC, and I might say in particular Black youth, need from their parents to succeed in the education system and beyond? What do you think the role of parents is? Yeah, go ahead.
So I was going to say, when it came to the question, I can't speak on the Indigenous youth or every person of color, but I can speak as a Afro-Caribbean student, because both of my parents are from the Caribbean. That first off, I want to say that, and My answer may be a little. I'm a student. I'm the son, so it's going to be a little more tuned to what's personally I would the answer that I would like to give to my parents as well. So I think it's just we need faith from our parents. We need to know. We need to let, or rather, have parents understand that we, as the age that we're at, 16, 17, 15, we know what we want to do, or that we want to do something, and even if we don't know specifically what it is yet, we want you to know that we get the support, and from our parents especially, because we don't necessarily get that type of stuff anywhere else. A lot of the affirmations that we get for the career choices that we make, or the hobbies that we pursue, come from our peers or from sometimes our teachers. We hope to see more that our parents listen to us and know that we have your support, that you have our back, right? I would like to know. I would like to ask a lot of parents here, or all parents here, to sit down with their children, with their kids, and just ask, who do you want to be, right? Not what do you want to be, it's who do you want to be, because when you say what, it already limits it in the scope of only going for a job. A lot of people don't, a lot of kids my age don't want to have a job for income. They want to have a career that they enjoy, that they feel like they have a passion for, well as being able to live under it, because nobody really wants to work a 9 to 5 that they don't enjoy. And with that question, I know that some parents ask that already, but they ask under the guise that they'll give them an answer that they necessarily want. And I want to say that when kids answer you truthfully, it may not be the answer that you want to hear when it comes to who they want to be. But the fact that they're telling you means that they expect that type of support, that they trust you enough to tell you what they actually feel in the first place. And that should be respected. And I would hope that, even though we may pursue our passions, which come in very different forms, some kids want to, be visual artists, some kids want to be culinary chefs. And of course, if you look at their incomes, they don't pay too much, and they don't seem to be very well known or very accredited positions, maybe as much as a lawyer or a psychologist or something along those lines. But we hope that you still give us that support anyway. I mean, for when it comes to my interests, I've been, pretty blessed in being an athlete. I play football and volleyball, and my career choice is that I want to be a teacher. And even though while I've gotten both a lot of support and a little bit of really, you want to be a teacher of all things? It's something that I want to do, because I feel like with the type of support that I was given from my teachers and guidance counselors, I want to be able to give that to another student. And because of that passion, because I have a passion for teaching people and giving people support where they need it and deserve it, I would expect that same type of attitude towards any student who wants to pursue something. And I'm saying this from experience from a friend, because they're currently going through a little bit of an issue with their career choices. They want to be a visual artist. And while it's very unstable markets, if because you have to make choices between whether or not you want to stay in a studio and maybe not make what you want to make, or make what you want to make as a freelancer and maybe not make nearly as much money as someone in a studio, or have that job security. They're still looking for support wherever they can find it, because that's what would. Okay, so I want to clear something up really quickly and say that when I say that we want support, it doesn't mean that if we don't get the support, we'll drop the career. So even when even if sometimes a parent might not be totally approving of their kid's career choice or what they want to do, the kid's still going to pursue it. We're still going to want to pursue our passions, and we're still going to do it despite that. But it just makes it harder for the both of us. It just makes it so that there's going to be a disconnect. I want to live my life, but you don't approve of that, so I'm just going to keep doing it anyway, and your relationship might suffer for it. It'd be much easier for everybody, especially the student, the kid, because that it'll probably hurt them a lot more, knowing that their parents aren't, uh, approving of their lifestyle. It'd be much easier to just have that sense of connection where I might not have made the same decision in my life, but because I love you unconditionally, I want you to be happy, no matter what that happiness may look like. of course, the parents would always want to see that well-being, see us doing well, see us financially stable, see us in a house or something along those lines. But we can do both. We can make do despite whatever career choice we make. So really, I just want parents to give us faith, give us trust in that we know what we're doing and that we know that we have the conviction to continue our lives no matter what's going to happen. We've gone through a pandemic, we're still going through it right now. We are going through racism, we're going through discrimination, we're going through every hurdle that we could have thought of when it came to how our careers are going. And we're still pushing forward for our futures. So because of that, I would hope that many parents especially would just tell their kids that whatever you choose to do, just know that I am right by your side as a parent and as somebody who loves you. And that's
I
all.
love
Thank
hearing
you.
your perspectives, Kyle. Thank you so much. And I love what you said. Who do you want to be, not what you want to be? And Kyle, I think you're going to be a phenomenal teacher. Like, it brought tears to my eyes when you said you wanted to be a teacher. You're going to be such a phenomenal teacher. And honestly, it's truly the greatest and most rewarding job, despite all the challenges. To this day, I don't feel like I work a job. I love what I do. So you're going to be phenomenal. Thank you. Thanks so much for that, Kyle. I do see your hand there, Trace. I'm just going to go over to America, and then when we get to the Q&As, we'll open it up, if that's okay. Marika, what am I going to ask you? I'm going to ask you, what is the challenge BIPOC and Black youth in particular are facing to become involved in communities and opportunities that are available?
Well, in my opinion, and I like kind of what Kyle said, I don't really speak for everyone. However, this is just from like my personal, like my personal opinion and kind of just like, from lived experiences. And obviously based on the conversation, I think that there are a lot of support systems for students. However, as a high school student who is currently running technically a support system for Black students within the building, and it's supposed to be like a space where Black students can feel comfortable and have healthy discussion, and also gain opportunities as in like scholarships and bursaries, and like find other leadership opportunities both within and without of the school. I still feel like sometimes there isn't maybe enough motivation from staff outside of that little portion of the community within the school. And it can sometimes be difficult because a lot of the students who go to the school, they spend a majority of the time in their classes with their teachers. So it's important for teachers, to also kind of get hands on, and like there's little things, even like scholarships that were like handed out. There was, I think by the BFCN, they handed out like a scholarship list, and I had an opportunity of looking at it and going through some of the stuff, and I shared it with the students who are in the Black Excellence Club. However, there's still like a bunch of other students like within the school who are not associated with the Black Excellence Club, and might have not had an opportunity to look at that. And I feel like there still could be some push from like the teachers within like classrooms to maybe like reach out to those students, whether it be like in the Google Classrooms, like posting it or talking about it in class, so that way students can at least have that foundation to look elsewhere. So yeah, that's what I feel in general pertaining to that.
Great. And what about things like, I know that the virtual is a real trial, but, community organizations that are trying, to run programming for BIPOC youth, and a lot of times the youth won't come out. Do you think that, are they tired? Do you think that it's just the workload for school? Are some of them working and going to school, so it's just too much? Is there just a lack of motivation? Just from your experiences with your peers, what are your thoughts about that?
I actually had a conversation about a week and a half ago with a student who was kind of on and off with our club. And I asked them, I was like, oh, like, why are you like just not interested in the club? Like, we're giving like opportunities. There's stuff here. And he's just like, I just don't feel like it matters, like, and when I heard that, I kind of like, I wasn't like too, well, I was a little taken aback because I was like, we're doing so much. So it was just like a bit surprising. But when I realized like the environment, like the teachers weren't invested, like their teachers weren't invested. And, there wasn't like enough push in comparison to like other clubs. And so I could only imagine for like online students, because there is that like minor disconnect in comparison to like in-person, students. So I feel like moving forward, in order to, create that connection, we need to just, like really get like that message out, because there's so many students out there and so many opportunities out there. And it's kind of hard for like one portion of like a community in the school to just do all of the work and try to, get to everyone, right? So it has to be like a conjoined effort to, really get out to other students, including online students as well too. So
Again, I love hearing your thoughts. Thank you so much for sharing, and I'm just so proud of you, and I'm so proud of Kyle. You're doing such amazing work in the school, really trying to help your peers, and just being such incredible, strong Black leaders. So thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you for your thoughts, and I'm glad that you were able to share a lot of those ideas with us, because I think as teachers, as educators, as people in the community, as community organizations, we're trying to figure out what we can do to continue to help BIPOC and in particular Black youth achieve success. Thanks so much for that. Chris, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Yeah, there's so much just good stuff to take in. And of course, I want to be mindful of time because I know that we all have school and work tomorrow. But I did want to just have a chance. If anyone had a question, they wanted to ask the panelists. I know I saw some good conversations happening in the chat. So if you're welcome to raise your hand and unmute yourself, but also if you want to write your question in the chat as well, you're free to. Yes, Tress, I know you had your hand up before.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to make a comment with what Kyle was saying about maybe parents don't really support youth, especially when it comes to some of the artistic fields. The funny thing is, over the last 2 years, what we've noticed is that the jobs that are in demand are the jobs we used to discourage kids from doing. So the funny thing is the parents are far behind that. And I feel like maybe when kids are coming into, how you have your parent teacher interviews or your grade, I don't know if this is something people could do, but maybe it's a good idea to start introducing some of these new careers. There are going to be many, many, many careers that's just going to be gone. They're not useful. They're not catching up, and you can't change them, or it's going to change. Those careers are going to change. So we really need to to give young people opportunities because they actually know what the careers are going to be in the future because they're actually practicing it now and they do it every day, right? But I think we're still, as parents, educators, trainers, that kind of thing, there's this mind shift that we have to go through. Because if we don't go through that mind shift, then we're going to have our young people in minimum wage jobs because we have got them into becoming overeducated, and then after 4 years of university, they still need another year or two for their masters and another year, 2 or 3 for their PhD to catch up to whatever. And so I feel like there's so many things out there. Like Aman started something that is in need, with diversity and inclusion being such a big thing. It's up and coming. It's actually just new. Like whether we want to admit it or not, this whole diversity and inclusion and the things that Donna's doing and all this kind of stuff, it is still so new. There's still so, and Nancy's doing, it's still so new that a lot of companies don't have it, right? And so they're going to need ways to test, to measure. And I mean, I'm taking a course right now, and one of the biggest things we're talking about is this. And I mean, Ahmad started something like this, which I know is out there, but the way it's being done, with the way he's doing it, seems so easy to understand. I think it's very important. And we were talking. Kyle was talking about a friend of his that's in graphic, who wants to become a graphic designer. For sure, 2 years ago, we would think graphic designer is a Fiverr type of job, right? But if you start looking at all of the, how many jobs are coming out in UI, UX, graphic design, multimedia, this is what's coming out right now because this is what the market demands, right at this moment.
Right.
So, yeah, so I think, Kyle, we do have to have a mind shift, right, as parents and educators, and coordinators, instructors. So thank you for bringing that up. And yeah, I totally believe that sometimes your hobby is what gets you the job. So thank you for that, Kyle.
Thanks, Tress. Donna, did you want to go ahead and jump in, and then Genesis,
Yeah.
you can afterward.
Thanks, Carissa. I should have actually taken my hand down because the way that Therese expressed that was so clear. And I'm just thinking about how education, this is not a time for education to plug in to all that you've just shared, Therese, to kind of dislodge us for a particular way of setting up our youth, and in particular our Black youth, for, roads to nowhere, really.
Genesis, do you have a question? And thanks, Donna.
Yeah, I had a question for Miss Cargioli regarding the Black coaches, the Black graduation coaches. I find that my school recently got one actually, and not a lot of people knew about it. I just recently found out about it, and I feel like a lot of students are like a lot of Black students are missing like great opportunities. And I wanted to ask Ms. Cargioli if they had any ideas to like inform students about the programs.
Hi, Genesis. Thank you for your question. It's unfortunate to hear that the few Black graduation coaches that we have, that the information is not getting out, and so I apologize if that's not getting out. On our Black Community Advisory Council, we have some student voice that we have on that council, and one of the big things that we heard was exactly, Genesis, what you were saying. And in listening to student voice, we started up 2 social media accounts that I'm going to put in our chat. Genesis, I'd love for you to follow, because we put out a lot of information on Instagram and Twitter in hopes that we can reach and get this information out. But what you're saying is speaking to something that needs to be addressed. And so if you're not getting this information, we need to work to ensure that this information is being disseminated across, because this program is so valuable and so needed, and it needs to make sure that it gets into the right hands. So there's work to do. There's absolutely work to do, Genesis. Thank you, Michelle. I see it.
Now we have a question in the chat. Let me just pull it up from Carmen. Okay, the question is, if you don't mind, I would love to hear an eye-opening experience that the panelists had during their journeys to increase inclusivity and diversity and lower discrimination. So is there a panelist maybe who hasn't spoken recently who would like to answer that question? Kyle, is your hand up to answer the question? Jump right in.
Okay, so I was actually going to respond to this in the first place, so I was just looking for the thumbs up, but this is a good question. I'd like to hear an eye-opening experience. So I feel like when it comes to the experiences that we feel, especially when it comes to increasing inclusivity and diversity, is that really it takes more than really, it's not as easy as just us having experience to increase inclusivity. It more has to come from the fact that we take our experiences and then, okay, so this happened. Why did this happen to me? And how can I turn this experience into something where other people who share the same experience can finally start to build a community around that, and then take out discrimination in the first place. And as a product, it would come in with inclusivity and diversity. So I would say I've had an experience where, of course, I I was just coming into high school. I was in grade 9, and a teacher, a black teacher, I hope he doesn't mind me name dropping him, but his name was Mr. Gallimore. He would he just looked at me in the hallway and said, you're gonna play football. And I said, sure, I will. He so after school that day, it was the hardest workout of my life. I ran across the field 20 times and I still came back. And I'm still playing football to this day under his team. So, and even then, right, I didn't even know that we had a football team. But he was gathering specifically a lot of the black students who were coming into the school to play for him. And we had a good amount of members there, not enough to form 2 separate teams, but it was still a very fun experience with a mixed varsity team. And through that, I had found that, because a few of the white teammates that I had were a little, racially and culturally insensitive. And after we had, talked about it as a team, gone around in a circle and said how these things might have affected us, they started to kind of start learning to not say these types of things, to start thinking differently. And at this point, they don't nearly say the types of things that they used to at the start of the year, right? And I feel like that would encapsulate sort of the way that we can use that experience through intersectionality to get more inclusivity into our schools, into our teams, into our clubs, into anything. It's a little harder when it comes to diversity because it always has to be based on population. But diversity, as it comes from a lens of a majority being non-Black, or of the racial or ethnic or sexual majority, of course it'll come with diversity as people come in. But at some point we have to start to not use diversity as a word and just say that it's part of a large group of a community, right? Because diversity can only go so far when it comes to populations, right? At this point, it's more of a buzzword.
Cool. Thanks, Kyle. Yeah, you bring up an interesting point of buzzwords. I wonder if does any other panelists want to add into that question, or does anyone else have a question you want to put in the chat, or go ahead and unmute yourself?
I had put my hand up, but I didn't want to be long, but I took it down. But because I really see this whole process as very interesting, as in my own experience as a piece of work in progress. Because when I look at a young man like Kyle, I'm thinking about how the high school I went to was Chinguacousy High School. That was 1970, in the 1970s. And I think you guys are all in Peel. I don't live in Peel anymore. I've moved. I've moved away from Peel several times. Once when I lived out west, but it's interesting how things change, but they remain the same. Because here we are still talking about the same topic that I know very well existed when I was, 17 and went to Chinguacousy High School, and I think we've come a long way. It's very enlightening to know that someone like Nancy Kagoli, she's you have all these people, people like me. We didn't have our people. We didn't have people advocating for us back then. I think that's why sometimes maybe someone like me, I wouldn't say take a backseat, but I'm really amazed at how far we've come from my own experience. And I think it's amazing. It's encouraging. When my kids were in high school, we didn't have those things either, but things have gotten better. And I applaud you guys for the work you're doing. Things change and they remain the same, because our issues when it comes to being racialized and stuff is the same as many other groups. Because when I saw out here where I live, how the First Nations youth were being kicked out of school in large proportions, like I was thinking, what? And this lady didn't know I understand the situation, but I do, because I work for Toronto District School Board. It was pathetic what they did, kicking kids out because they wore hats. Are you kidding me? I didn't want to be part of that kind of craziness. I'm done.
Thank you, Renee. I noticed that Nana has their hand up if you would like to go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, yeah. Just want to say it's good to be here, but my thing is a little bit deeper. You know, when I look at anti-Black racism, and sometimes I like to center Black people because we sometimes get lost in BIPOC and certain language. So I want to definitely center. I'm talking about anti-Black racism, and it's in so many different areas of people activity. So for me, I'm into the business of dismantling, you know, and so we'll say we have made progress, but nobody can guarantee my safety when I drive up the road of the police. Nobody can guarantee if I have a mental episode that I'll be protected. We're still burying people. Children are still being arrested in school because of their Black skin. You know, and so as an activist, Black Lives Matter before Black Lives Mattered. Before George Floyd, we were here talking about Albert Johnson, Lester Donaldson, you know, Junior Manan, Hugh Dawson. And so we've been here, Erica Sawe, people been murdered by the police. We had to push the TDSB to get an Afrocentric alternative school. So I know that as African people, we continue to get help. What I want to know is, can we commit? Can we get the police force to commit? Can we get the politicians to commit to dismantle white supremacy and racism out of all areas of people activity? I want to hear who is willing to sign on that pledge. Because if you don't tonight, 100 years from now, our children will have the same conversation, still catching hell from white supremacy. So I just want to hear what people saying. How are we going to really dismantle this thing? Because I thought every day I get up, I'm wondering how I'm going to defeat it. When I sing a song, when I do a poem, I talk about, I want to peel the racism out of peel. It's about that same work. So I just want to know, what are we willing to do? Each one of us on this call to try to make the young people's lives better 100 years from now.
Thanks, Nana. I'm even wondering, Peter, if you can speak to that getting far but not quite far enough. And how do you respond to that? And as the Peel Police, what is that response like?
So to eradicate an ideology or someone's ideas, ideally, yes, I'm Black, my children are Black. I would have loved for that to be a thing we can do, to take an ideology and just have it, disappear. We're left with progress. We're left with taking steps. We're left with continuing, the course, step by step. And it's sustainable actions and persistence, and not just settling for, performative actions. I understand the frustration. I hear it. I feel it. I experience it. So yeah, again, it's just, I'm the insider, outsider in my organization, and in my community as well, when I hear things like this. But again, it's just for me as an individual, remaining consistent, committed, holding people accountable, and I see and hear actions and empowering others to do that. And I think one by one, each of us has a role to play in that regard. So yeah, that would be my response.
Thank you, Peter. I think Josephine might have had their hand up first, and I saw Aman, America, and Kyle, all your hands pop up as well. So Josephine, if you want to go ahead, ask your question.
Thank you. My name is Josephine Bell. I'm a community advocate for social justice. I have been working on race relations and diversity and inclusion since, late 90s. Okay. Yes, I heard so many things tonight, and it's very nice. Uh, Pretty similar to the Chinese community last year. I heard from the youth a lot of things we didn't realize how the kids feel until they speak up. And unfortunately, as a parent, most of the parents they are not aware of it, right? Whether you are second generation and third generation, there are a lot of gaps between the parents and the youth. So I thought we really need education for both. How are we going to understand each other and work better? Now, when you mentioned about money, I'm also on United Way, so I just really want to remind everybody that United Way has a community grants program. I actually recently worked on it, and we put an emphasis on mental health and approved quite a bit of money. And like when it's now, of course, as close because we just did a round. So next time when you see it, feel free to come up with a project, whether it's a few $1,000s or $10,000, you still get a chance. Depends on the competition at that time, right? And for the federal government, they have special entrepreneurship and business owners, special grants for those two groups, especially targeted for the Black community. So I think people should really try it. For the city, because I'm also on the diversity and inclusion committee, we are now taking a look at how to improve the city's hiring and promotional practices. So this is very important. And I think, like you folks, if you are interested, you can always spoke with the city for deputation. When we have meetings, we are open to public deputation. You can, you know, um, contact, the city staff in advance and make your deputation. And then usually it's 5 minutes, but then the questions and discussion are not counted in, right? So if there's any help, Ron could contact me because I am also working for FM 109.5, and I constantly interview trustees and politicians from three levels of governments. So actually, just last week, we emphasized on mental health, but of course, there's a shortage of mental health workers and even other health support workers because that's the way it is. We don't have enough, right? How to expand it into the university and training program, and it's really, we have to push forward. Remember, the politicians work for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Josephine. Um, and I'm just looking at time and I realize that some people might have to step out. And so I do want to give the last people who have their hands out, Aman, Mirka, and Kyle, if you want to give us your last thoughts to kind of end the discussion portion. And then we're going to have time for our draw, which I know some people are excited about. So if the three of you would like to finish your last thoughts.
Do you want us all to just kind of talk at the same time? Or I think that would be
Or
better for time's sake.
yeah, Kyle, if you even want to just like conclude what you kind of wanted to say, or because I know your hand was up and wrap, yeah.
Yeah, so I said a lot of what I wanted to say in chat because I saw that there was going to be a little bit of a time constraint. But what I was going to say is that there is no change that happens, no substantial change that will happen if we continue to be internal with all of our activism. We have to look outside of just being inside of a school in order to combat racism. We have to make some sort of, if we're going to make a committee, it has to be something that is disconnected from the actual school, or it can be commissioned by these institutions that are already in place, because then it just becomes a byproduct of that. And while it may be advisory, it may not actually be active in trying to eliminate these types of disparages. Also, I've been talking about in here how my dad, he has been a president of the Grenadian Association of Canada. Essentially, it's a coalition of Grenadians in Canada where we talk about immigration and how many Grenadian immigrants do not make it into Canada due to very unjust factors such as Well, they might not be employed, or they might not cover the same type of qualification it may be to get into the country when they obviously do. And right now he is working on behalf of the TTC to combat anti-Black racism as well. Within the TTC, the Toronto Transit Commission. Due to that, I look at what he's doing as his example, and I start to try to incorporate it into my type of activities as well, and how I can to combat these inequities as well. Because I've related to the Black Panther Party, as I said in my chat, where if it was commissioned by the American government, it would not nearly have the same type of effect on Black Americans as it did. Because in and of itself, it was meant to protect Black communities from the state. And so how can we protect ourselves from the state, or that it does oppress us, plain and simple, when we are part of it? That is why I kind of had a disagreement when I heard politicians work for us, because it's not really exemplified in their behavior.
Thanks, Kyle, for that comment. Aman, America, did you want to give your last thought? Because I know your hand was up. And of course, also feel free to comment in the chat as well.
I think a lot of people kind of said what I wanted to say in terms of like within the education system. I think that kind of like Kyle said, there's a lot of things that do need to be dismantled. And in order if we want to see any sort of like progress within the education system, we do need to create a brand new foundation aside from the school, because it's already in so many ways like corrupt that it's kind of difficult to start something anew on something that is already so like embedded for all the like it's embedded and it's not set in for all the right reasons. Specifically for me, I know what students like what I'm personally trying to do in my school. I'm trying to make sure that we're trying to like bring out information any way that we can. I know that there's still like for teachers, there's still like a lot of work in terms of like making like work more culturally responsive. And there is, you know, a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of culturally responsive pedagogy. But though, just speaking from just a student, I know that there is like a lot of things like we can learn on our own and spread to others within conversations. I know even like in history, it does come from a very Eurocentric perspective. So in class, you know, we take the time to, you know, dismantle kind of like the ideologies that are being like, you know, set, and like, you know, what historical aspects are being covered, and, you know, what connects to what. So then that way it's a little bit more inclusive. And also within the school, you know, we try to put up, you know, like posters and, you know, videos. We started a new segment at our school called, you know, Ask HB, which is basically we're asking students around the school and, you know, asking different sets under like certain topics. We talked about anti-Black racism, and you know, we had like a discussion with that, and everyone was like mandated to watch it, which was also another thing. The severity in like certain topics and how we talk about certain things. Even I saw it in Black History Month, where some teachers like basically dismissed a lot of the information and the stuff we were asking them to put out there. And there were some teachers like didn't even look into it. We tried to make it fun and interactive. We tried to do Quizlets, we tried to do videos, and they still didn't even take in the time. And I was like, why aren't they doing it? And they were like, I don't know, you know? So like kind of like that, we need to kind of like keep pushing forward and making it more mandatory, because like these types of conversations are really important. And, you know, we are creating the next generation, you know, the politicians, the engineers, the people who are working in medicine. There's like, these are the people who are going to, you know, work in our world. And if they do not know like the basic constructs, then we're, you know, we're going to be in trouble. And I don't blame students, you know, when they say certain things or they react to certain things, because, you know, we aren't being like taught those things within the classroom. Or if we are, it's very like on like, it's only the surface. We're only bridging the surface and we're not going in deeper. So it's like repeated narratives. And that's kind of where that like cycle of like regurgitated information comes from, and that's why people like there isn't a lot of change that's happening, you know. So we really need to personally as a student, I'm going to do what I can, but teachers, you know, and staff, you know, really need to like continue working on embedding cultural responsive pedagogy wherever they can. And you know, yeah, that's all I really had to say about that.
Okay.
Thank you. Ron, did you want to go ahead?
Well, it's just in terms of time, you know, I know the conversation is great, but at the same time, we don't want to overdo it. I know people have to go to work, student got to go to school. I think we shouldn't cut at this point. I'm sorry for those who might have some questions, but we just have to be mindful of the others. I know they're being respectful to us and not walking away. So at the same time, I think we have had an excellent discussion. We have touched on a number of relevant issues, from education and the impact of racism and employability. We touched on DEI and all those kind of related issues. So I just want to say thank you to everyone that came out tonight. We really appreciate your input and the discussion. Of course, this is the first of a series of these community forums we will be having. So we will get the opportunity to continue this dialogue and this discussion. So again, sorry that I have to cut it at this point, but it's in the interest of all that are here tonight. And I just suspect that some are just being extremely kind by sitting this out. Not that the information being discussed is not meaningful, not interesting, is not thought-provoking, but we all know we are busy, busy people. So I'm gonna thank Trez, Aman, Kyle, Marika, Renee, Donna, Nancy, and Peter, and I hope you don't mind the first name. I'm just trying to just rush through it. Thank you guys so much. We really appreciate what you have done for us tonight. And like I said, we are hoping that some of you will choose to come back when we do this, I think sometime in May, end of May towards the beginning of June. We had mentioned that there will be a few prizes, and I'm just kind of cutting through the chase so we get to it. I think Carissa has 2 sets of prizes, if I'm not mistaken. We, like I mentioned to you guys earlier, Olive Steels is with us, and she had promised 3 books. So I'm sure Carissa have come up with a way of selecting those 3 names. So I'm just gonna hand it back to her. But at the same time, before I go, I just want you all to know that the CACD spring program is starting next week. And so we are open that you'll get registrants for a middle school program or high school program and our post-secondary program. And we are doing a wonderful job, I think, with these students, where they get the opportunity of getting their community service hours, certificates from the Ontario legislature, from the House of Commons. We are planning a number of trips and a whole slew of things to benefit these young people. So don't forget, just send me an email to get more information about this as we try to register participants for next week's program. Do send me an email to ask for detail and I'll provide you with more. At this point, I'm gonna hand it over quickly to Carissa so that she can make these announcements of the winner.
Thank you, Ron. Yes, Sonia, if you can give me screen sharing ability, I will share this wheel that I have, I'm going to spin. And so we do have a few prizes. One is for the draw. we had 9 students who contributed and commented on Instagram about how they were involved in their community, and they got entered into the draw. So I have that one. And then we also have our book draw, and that's with everyone who's present in this space. So thank you, Sonia, for giving me the ability to share it. Let me start here. I'll start with the students because I know they have been waiting so eagerly. Thumbs up, I'm assuming you can see my screen, and I'm going to spin the wheel. So this is for the $100 gift card for student draw. And it is, oh, that was close. Congratulations, Avi. I hope you're in the crowd, because if you are, you will get it. So make sure we'll be in contact with you. Now, let me just, and Ron, remind me, you have 3 books, right?
Yes.
3 copies? Okay, does that mean 3 people can win, or one person gets all 3?
No, 3 different persons.
Okay, then we're gonna do this 3 times. If you're all ready, first spin. Woo. Nana, you are the first one. Congratulations, Nana. Let me make sure I'm keeping track of these guys. Nana's the first book winner. The second book winner. Marina. Congratulations, Marina. And the last one, and then I'll let you all go to bed. Carla. Congratulations, Carla. All right. I'll stop my screen share, so we'll be in contact with you guys.
Is Olive still with us? Olive?
Maybe she's left.
Maybe she's left.
Carissa.
Yes.
Yeah, there was something in the chat that Avi is not here. I don't know if you need to be spinning the wheel again for someone
then should I just do one last spin?
Yeah.
Wait, I just saw Avi is. I think I saw someone say Avi is here.
Oh, is that what they said? I thought they said it wasn't here.
No, they said Avi is Ali.
Oh, it is not. Okay.
They said Avi is Ali.
Okay, then I'm gonna do one more spin, all right? That sound good, everybody? Okay, so let's see, 1 second. It should be, oh, that's the wrong one.
The wrong one.
You guys had your chance. Okay, back to the high school students.
Wow, that's so cute.
There you go. Karan, are you in the room?
Well, he was here recently. Yeah, not here.
Oh, he's here.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm here.
Excellent.
You're gonna want to make sure that you're here. Okay, awesome. We'll be in contact. Thank you, everyone. And
okay, guys. So again, let me just thank you all for a wonderful evening. It was great conversation. And for sure, we are looking forward to the next one, which I said will be around the end of May, thereabout. So again, thanks. Have a wonderful rest of the evening. And do remember, CACD programs, middle school, high school, and post-secondary. So tell your students, all you teachers, educators, about the programs that CACD is running. Just give me a call and I'll provide you with posters and summary information of these programs. Thanks again, and looking forward to be with you again in the near future.
I just want to say thank you to Miss Luke